we need to show. Yeah.
So you're ready? Ruh-roh.
Trace ship failed. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did.
Did you come all the way from the Netherlands just to see this?
Yeah.
Mexico?
Philadelphia.
Thank you very much. My voice doesn't usually open up till about midnight from that club schedule, so I'm trying to get it out there. Does anybody have any questions? Main inspiration for the scat lines. That's a tough one. I started some of you may not be familiar with Colonel Bruce Hampton in the Aquarium Rescue Unit. He's kind of a redneck Frank Zappa, and he's a character, man. He's something else. And we used to do these musical skits. Well, I don't know what to call it. It was kind of half music, half performance art. And he would just call these, he would take a moment in the evening, and he would just say, Max Roach, and then the drummer would have to play like Max, and then he called somebody Wes, and the guitar player would have to play like Wes. And he called Benson one day, and the guitar player, he just doesn't sing, so he didn't want to do it. And I just stepped up and did it as a joke, really, because everything we did was as a joke. And I had no intentions of ever continuing to do that, and it was because of Bruce that we'd be playing, and fortunately I got to take as many solos as I wanted, and I'd get the elbow in the side, dude, sing along, and I was like, man, leave me alone, I don't want to do that, that's not me. And I eventually started to do a little research, and I found that it went back to a lot of really old blues guys. And John Lee Hooker was the one that really, it got in there. And when I heard Hooker, I realized that Hendrix had taken a lot of stuff from him, and probably, some other guys too. And I drew from that really more than Benson. Obviously, you can't do it without drawing some from Benson, because I heard it growing up so much, and it's in there. I can't sing as good as he does. So I tried to go back, take it way back so I could dig down into just the roots of it. And there's a few bass players that have done it too, like Slam Stewart. And it's as old as strings and voice. So there's a lot of different sources you can draw from that as far as the scat thing. But the old blues guys, I like that sound when they're humming along with it, which is what Slam Stewart used to do with the bow, and then you really get some resonance going. But with the guitar, it just has a sound like ghosts are doing it, So that's mainly my inspirations. John Lee Hooker, believe it or not. Anybody else right here? How many hours do I practice? This is embarrassing. I haven't practiced since I was about 19, man. I did, when I told my parents I wasn't going to college and that I wanted to be a bass player, you can imagine how that sat with them. So I did a lot of practicing. And I did the whole 9 hours a day, come home after the gig and then practice till 4 in the morning and whatever. But most of it's just been live gigs. And fortunately, I've been able, with the Aquarium Rescue Unit, to gig. We did about 270 dates a year. And playing live with a really good drummer 2 or 3 hours a night, that's, really sweating and having it the full furious pace. That was really the only practice that I've had. The only time I practice now is when I'm writing music and I'm in the 4-track, and I write just on the bass. So I'll do the melody and then I'll do the chords and do the bass line, and I have a little drum machine or something like that. And I end up spending a lot of time playing then. I wouldn't necessarily, I guess it's practice. If you're playing, it's practice. But it's not, running through scales, and I need to do that a lot. I have this stuff, Carol Kay, a incredible bass player. I was at the NAMM show, and you know how you hear all the guitar players and everybody just like, which is great. I love it all, but I heard this old style funky, and I thought it was a drummer and a bass player and a guitar player. So I'm walking around I'm like, I got to see who this is, because this is like music. It's not just bass. And as soon as I get closer, I realize there's nobody else playing. And I turn the corner, and here's Grandma sitting in a chair. I mean, I still can't believe it, man. I just flipped out. And so, fortunately, the people at Modulus knew her, and they introduced me to her, and we eventually played at the Modulus booth, and she picks up a guitar and starts playing all this chord melody stuff. So she showed me some the stuff, extended triads, and she was like, "You're really good, but you need to learn this, and you'll be really playing then, So I wrote it all down, and man, I couldn't see it. I didn't get it. I mean, I saw it when she showed it to me, and then like everything else, I couldn't get it afterwards. And about a year later, it hit me, and so I kind of was practicing with that a little bit. Not nearly enough, but she stumped me. She gave me some stuff that I'll be working on for the rest of my life. And I just want to give it up to Carol Kay right now, because she's unbelievable. And one of the nicest people you ever meet in your life. All right, we're going to play a little bit of a little blues, a little swing, and then hopefully Carol will hear some of her extended triad stuff that she showed me in this, if she ever listens to it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions out there? One over here.
Do you have any artists that you'd like to work with in a near or distant future?
Wow. Man, that's a long list. Do I have any artists I'd like to work with?
Bass players only.
Oh, bass players?
Yeah.
Specifically? Man, that's a long list, too.
I was trying to help you out.
You know, there's so many. I started out as a drummer, so I guess most of the guys I want to work with are drummers. I tell you who I'd like to work with, but I'd be too scared. Milt Hinton. Definitely. I'd like to just meet him one time. But, you know, there's tons of guys. I mean, I've gotten the chance to work with Victor Wooten, which is great. With Dave Pomeroy, I'm glad he's playing with me. You know, there's a bunch of cats. Everybody that's here today, you can put them all on the list. You know, I met Percy Jones. I don't know if he's in here right now, but I saw him. I was like, you know, I'd like to work with him. I like to work with everybody, man. Everybody on every instrument that I can, except for my heroes. Just kidding. Right here.
Oh, is that semi-hollow or
yeah,
decoration?
I guess these are called semi-hollow. He was asking me, is this the bass that I've designed with Modulus? And I got to tell you, they gave me so many basses. They were like, well, we got to do a signature bass. I said, man, I'm out of ideas. I don't know what to do now. You know, I got everything I want. And I wanted to have a piccolo bass, but I didn't want to get a 7-string because I have big hands, but I figured this is as wide a neck as I want to deal with. And so I got the strings from D'Addario, and they sent them to me, and I strung it from a E to a high F. And I string it in fourths, just I like to stay in the bass land. And that's where I got the idea for the hollow body, because I figured, well, I'd like to make the higher strings sound a little bassier, a little rounder. And so the hollow body would make the high string sound more like a bass instead of a guitar. But I was playing in the 4-track one day, or actually listening through 3 or 4 different songs that I had laid on that particular cassette. And this one song just had this tone that was unbelievable, and it was this bass. So I couldn't resist putting the low B on it and seeing if it beefed that up too. And it sure did. So that, you know, it's been strung like this ever since. And I guess they're technically called semi-hollow because it's not really wide, but it's hollow all the way up to the tips. And it really does make a difference. I heard it more with the direct sound in the headphones, but now if I were to switch back to the regular solid body, I could feel the difference because I've been playing it for a while now. And I had this one made. The prototype wasn't like this. This one is active and passive with a little switch because I got turned on to playing with tube amps, which is why I'm now with Ampeg. A friend of mine had I let him borrow a cabinet of mine and keep a 5-string at his studio, and he said, you know, I love this sound of this bass, but I'm trying to go for that old AC/DC, like SVT sound. And he had a Ampeg V4, a really old guitar head, and one of these 410 cabinets. And I said, just turn the tweeter off and run it through that at a low volume so it won't break up. And for recording, it should be like a little mini SVT. And when I got off the road, he just was flipped out. He said, you've got to come downstairs and plug all your basses through this. So I plugged all my basses through a Marshall cabinet, a Marshall head, and it was a 412 cabinet. And it was the best sound I ever heard. I could not believe it. And the funk sound for thumping and slapping, unbelievable. For some reason, solid state, when you overdrive it, it compresses. In tubes, it opens up and fans out like a prism. And that sound took me a while to get used to, but especially with the funk sound, when you're really pulling out and it just fans out, it's unbelievable. And I was lucky enough that Ampeg approached me after, thanks to you, doing bass players took over the world in Nashville. And they flew me up there, and I tried all the stuff out, and it was just unbelievable. So, but getting back to the passive, the reason I did that is because when I was in the studio, I was running through guitar amps, little teeny guitar amps, and they don't have inputs for active and passive. Like these amps have I have an SVT Classic, and that has two different inputs. So the EMGs and the active electronics were overdriving the guitar amps too hard. So these are really low output passive pickups, and they sound great. With the Allman Brothers, it's not just a gig, it's a whole legacy that you have a responsibility to carry on. And it just has to do with, I'm trying to do it like Barry Oakley and Lamar Williams, and do it like my predecessors did it. And you have, in a 20-minute guitar jam, you have plenty of time to express yourself. And you have to. I mean, you can't just do the same thing over and over again. And it's been really fun. It's given me a whole new style. I drew a lot from Bobby Vega, who plays with a band called Zero. I had a chance to play with him. I think he's from San Francisco or Oakland or something like that. But he plays with a pick, and it's so funky. So I tried to draw on that style, and I'll got a 4-string here that I'll try to do a little bit of that later on if I don't talk too much and run out of time. But I use my 6-string on. They give me a bass solo, and I do a little scat thing, and I'll do some of that for you guys. What I do with them on that solo. All right, we're gonna play a little more. I'll do a. This is just something. It kind of demonstrates really the reason I got the 6-string, which is to explore chords. Dave Pomeroy, thank you so much, man. Anybody out there? Over here. He asked me in the article they did in Bass Player about there was a point where I wanted to quit, and he said, what advice can you give to people who are at that point? Quit. Quit now. Save yourself the trouble of the heartache. I don't know, man. There's really no advice. I tell my students, if you're going to do this, there's only one way to do this, and that's if you have to. And you'll find out. Because after you go through all the bleep that I've been through, I should have quit 10 times over. But I just love it. There really is no advice, to tell you the truth. The one thing I can see, Bruce Hampton was the turning point for me. I have enough sense to try to seek somebody like that out, but the timing was right. I was ready to meet somebody like that, and he was ready to meet me. And I guess all I can say is try to find a mentor, somebody that really inspires you, that can help keep you on track. And, with the ARU, Bruce basically told me, look, you're not making any money, and you're playing a lot of music that you don't like. So you're not going to make any money playing with me, but we'll have a blast. So I thought, well, he's right. I'm not making any money now. What's the difference? I might as well go have fun. And then everything turned around. And it was, it's one of the miracles that's happened in my life. And as I stand here now, I'm really glad that I didn't quit. And I really don't think I would have quit, but I was at that point where I was so frustrated, man. I just didn't know what to do. And Earth just, beats you to a pulp. And you just got to take it and, move on. So just try to find somebody, that keeps you inspired. And that's what he did for me. Tore down a lot of boundaries and walls and all that kind of stuff, and really was great for me. Right here.
Speaking of inspiration, how much did Stanley have as far as style in your career? Stanley Clarke.
Stanley Clarke?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think there's any bass player around my age that hasn't been influenced by Stanley. When I started out, I was really into the funk guys, because I'm a drummer. I was playing drums, and when I switched to bass, it was Verdine White, Larry Graham, Louis Johnson, Bootsy. He's still my main man. I love him to death. And my brother kind of got me, there was a conspiracy going on. My dad wanted me to get back into jazz. And so my brother kind of took me through the fusion stuff back into jazz. And he turned me on. That's when I got into Alfonso, Jaco, and Stanley, and Percy Jones, and a lot of guys that just completely blew me away. And, Stanley's a huge influence, man. There's just so many tunes that you just had to learn. And Jaco, obviously, and Alfonso, those are my three biggies, starting out before I started to explore all these other cats, too. So I definitely got to give it up to Stanley.
You have an interesting fingering technique with your right hand when you're running the fast lines. Could you explain what you're doing?
Well, most of the time, I kind of developed this stuff by accident, with in the momentum of the moment. and I've discovered after some students telling me what I was doing, because I guess I wasn't explaining it very well, that I do a lot of tapping with this finger on my left hand. And then there's some stuff like the triplet stuff where you lead off with the tap. Yeah. Just two, yeah. I ain't like Percy. I can't get them three going, man. I would need to get him to show me that. But and a lot of the it's a lot of tapping. So I'm cheating, really. I mean, I guess there is no cheating, really, but that's what I'm doing. Right here?
Yeah, how do you learn to play over changes? I know it's like a long process.
I still can't. I listen to Gary Willis and John Patitucci and these guys that just run giant steps, and I just want to try to break this graphite. Fortunately, it won't break, so I just have to keep on doing my thing. It's really hard, man. That's basically the final frontier, you know. My brother is a very accomplished flautist, I guess is the right word. And he was playing with a lot of heavy jazz cats when he was like 12. And he has perfect pitch, and he runs through changes. It's just unbelievable. It's really depressing. So all I can tell you is take certain tunes. Like when Carol Kay showed me the extended triads, all I did was just practice over blues, and I still don't have it down, you know. But my tunes are a little easier. They have really weird chord changes and stuff. But since I wrote them, it's easier for me to solo over, you know. So I kind of cheat by, you know, just playing my own stuff all the time. But I still just revere the jazz guys that really, you know. I'm a hybrid player. I don't read, and I just go with what sounds good. A lot of these chords, the system I have. The system that I use enables me to use certain variables at random. So I really don't even know what I'm going to do. I know the top note that I'm going to play, but the chord underneath it could be anything. And I'll show you all some of that in a little bit. I kind of learned it from Reggie Wooten, who was showing me how to play chord melody because I was doing it backwards. And then I kind of found this. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but that's what I do. So, I guess we should play a little bit more. Reggie Washington, y'all. This is a tune called Equinox that Mr. John Coltrane. Thank you. I'll show you some of a little bit of the chords that I try to use. Obviously, Jocko was a huge influence as far as chords and stuff like that, everything. But I really I took a lot of the basic chords that you use on a 4-string, like a dominant 7th. And when I got the 5-string, that's just 1, 7, 10. I added a 5th on top. So I had like a 13. And you know, obviously when I got the 6th string, I just keep adding a 4th on top of everything, you know. So you got, you know, that's that same chord with a 4th on top of that. And then I found these two. You could do a G7 like that. There's also a way to do the 10th. You do a tritone up for that, and a major 3rd up from that. And you can take these chords and move them chromatically down and just do 2 5s in the bass. So, like the same dominant 7th, I move you do take any of these chords and start moving any of the voices around, the middle one, the lower one, or the higher one. I started out with the highest voice. I got a sharp 9 by moving that up a half step. That's just a regular 3rd. That's my favorite one. It's a flat 5, dominant 7, flat 5. And my brother plays bass for me now, so I can, when I'm soloing, I don't have to keep the roots in there. But, you know, a lot of chords like this, the sharp 9. And then there's some other chords like the same chord, you can put a 5th on top of that. And get all the whole tone stuff. That's it. Now some of the chords I was using that I was singing along with, these are harder to. I don't have a very good way of explaining this yet, but I look at the shapes, and there's basically 3 shapes. You're dealing with the top note of the scale. They get hard below the, 12th fret. But that is there's always a major or minor 2nd in there, and then a major or minor 6th on the top. So that's the minor 3rd right there of A. And then the roots on top. So I got a minor 2nd below it and a 6th up. And all you do is just take this chord and, diatonically move each note down. And these hurt a little bit at first, but no pain, no gain, It's hard to do while I'm singing and look away from it. But and you can get all the major. I think that's it. And then when I'm moving these chords around, like I'll go through each note of the scale. Well, it'll be major and minor. And that's just moving the lower two voices a half step down or up. And I just move it around at random. You should experiment that way, and you'll find a lot of chords that sound good, and you may not know where to use them yet at first. But I do that a lot. I just sat around usually doing stuff in E. I've got these guys playing in A now because it's stuff that I do on a live gig. But I just drone an open note and move these voicings around and just experiment basically and see what I come up with. And back here.
Do you feel that when you sing and play that it helps the music to come more from you and less from your hands?
Yes, it does. I notice that when I play, and I see a lot of guys that go through this switching back and forth between electric and acoustic. I notice that they tend to play more melodically on acoustic because the frets aren't there and you're not looking at the same old patterns over and over. And when I sing, it does make me, I tend to hit a note and then listen to it for a second instead of moving on into whatever patterns that I'm used to playing. And it really, that's one of the reasons that I kept doing it, because it helped me. There's players like Jocko out there, and I know everybody thought he just had the most chops and all that, but his sense of melody to me was what captured my attention. And I ended up experimenting after scatting a little bit, just playing nursery rhymish type stuff, just come up with little stupid, nursery rhymes that, not stuff that we know necessarily, but you just kind of make them up on the spot. Just to stay in that state of melody. I've listened to a lot of Charlie Christian to kind of get me back in that mode. I slip out of it, but yeah, the singing definitely changes things as far as that goes. Right here.
There's some guys in Nashville who are doing some slipping away from doing the bluegrass and getting into doing concert versions of classical music, basically. Edgar Meyer, Mark O'Connor, and anything on your plate for that?
Classical? Well, I can't read, so that's going to rule that out for me. But I don't know. I would suspect at some point I would get into it. I studied classical on some other instruments, and I guess I probably, I would have to, I'm searching for the right sound to do that. I hate to do it on electric and bastardize it. And not to take away from other people who have done it, because they've done a great job with it, and I like what they've done. But it just feels uncomfortable to me. I'm prone more to just play like Bootsy or something, than Chopin, So, but that's a good idea. Something I need to probably work on. All right, I'm going to play a quick solo thing for you guys. This comes from, I guess it was initially inspired by Tony Levin. I was hanging out with Reggie Wooten, who's Victor's older brother that plays guitar. And he said, "Man, you ever do any taps or two-handed stuff?" I said, "Man, I can't do that stuff like, Billy Sheehan and Tony Levin, these guys that play stick, and Billy just goes nuts." And I said, "Man, I'll probably wait till I can buy a stick to do that." And he just grabbed my bass and just went to town, laid it on his lap. So I started working out some of this two-handed stuff initially just to explore being able to get more chord voicings in. With a dominant seventh like this, I can get a chord like that, and you can do the same thing with minor and major. So this kind of utilizes some of those techniques. This is based on a song called "Time Is Free," which is written by a percussionist, a conga player named David Earl Johnson, that he left his home in North Carolina and went to Cuba as a really, really young man. and studied with these guys. And he wrote a lot of stuff for Jan Hammer and that whole crew that back then. And he's an incredible musician. And this is based on his song. Thank you. Thank you. What am I saying? Get the funk out my face. That's what this is called.